Did you know that in the unsanctioned booster packs, the non-showcase artworks for each basic land have a hidden squirrel in them? It's harder to see for some of them than in others, but I've outlined where they're speculated to be here, 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 and here, and it was a truly elegant and subtle nod to one of Magic's sillier archetypes. Merch, like, comment, subscribe. Hello, welcome back to Basics, a show where I take EDH commanders and try to find the perfect basic lands to fit them. I love seeing someone sit down with some beautiful basic lands, but something I love even more is seeing how well those lands match their commanders. One quick note before we begin. I like to give the artists credit for their artworks, but I may not pronounce their names perfectly. I'll try my best, but please forgive me and correct me if that ever happens. Starting things off, we've got a partner pairing, Zndrsplt, Eye of Wisdom, and Okaun, Eye of Chaos. This one turned out to be much easier than I initially thought, because they are clearly in a gladiatorial sport combat scenario, and there was a large emphasis on the stands of excited patrons waiting to see the show. So that pushes the choices of lands to primarily that. So I started with the lands from Battle Bond illustrated by Titus Lunter, namely this mountain and this island to match that aesthetic. However, something I really enjoyed is that these are not the only two choices of lands that fit this theme. Check out this island illustrated by Jonas DeRoe from the 2020 Magic Fest promo cards, and this mountain from the same set and illustrator as well. These two are a few more dollars because they only come in foil, but it's an elegant choice if you are wanting to bling out your deck for this particular partner pairing. Second on the list, we've got Osgir the Reconstructor, who I really enjoyed finding basic lands for. Osgir represents a new wave of Boros-colored commanders, switching its focus from the typical militia leader aesthetic to an archaeological artifact-centered concept. So I wanted to try to find lands that represent that uniqueness, starting with this mountain for Amonkhet, illustrated by Chris Ron, and this plains from Hour of Devastation, illustrated by Lars Grant West. Both of these depict the destroyed city of Naktamun, but it fits the concept of his playstyle, digging through rubble and ruin to find things to reconstruct. From a lore perspective, I went with basic lands from his home plane for this second pairing. So I went with this mountain from Strixhaven, illustrated by Grady Frederick, and this plains from Strixhaven, illustrated by Jonas DeRoe. I really like the plains in this pairing, because it has a cool ruined statue in the foreground as well to fit. Now for this third concept, we need to look back to his artwork and notice how much blue is present in it. It's an interesting choice to keep this pale cyan as an accent color, both in the magic in his hands and in the reflections and the background, but I was able to actually find lands in Boros colors that match that. So take a look at this plains from Ikoria, illustrated by Jesper Ising, and this mountain from Throne of Eldraine that is also illustrated by Jesper Ising. Both have the reds and the pale gold color, but are accented by that unique heavy blue that I think looks really good together for such a uniquely colored commander. Up in third today, we've got Syr Gwyn, Hero of Ashvale, from the Throne of Eldraine themed Brawl decks, who I believe exemplifies the color schemes of Mardu-based commanders. There was a lot of potential use cases in her artwork, but I was able to focus on just a few unique notches that she specifically fills, namely the horse charging in the foreground and the brilliant white cape and tassel that are fluttering behind her. So take a look at this plains from Jumpstart, illustrated by Donato Jean Cala, that exemplifies the horse charging aspect of her artwork, along with this mountain from Kaladesh, illustrated by Yaitan Zana, that has the sunset color scheme, the dark foreground images, and a trail of white birds fluttering across the frame as well. And then we combine those two lands with this swamp from M13, illustrated by Mike Biurek, that has a perfect color scheming across all three. I think that this palette gives a wonderful example of her playstyle and the thematic elements that only she has. However, along those lines, I have a second land pairing to show for you, one that matches the same general themes. This plains from Commander 2013, illustrated by Young Park, this swamp from Kaladesh, illustrated by Adam Paquette, and this mountain illustrated by Sam Burley from Magic Origins. I really like this combo because it accentuates the fiery color palette, and it feels like night is falling in the sky behind each of them, which matches Syr Gwyn in her artwork. Now fourth on the list, we've got Dina Soulsteeper from Strixhaven, which ended up being quite simple. Looking at her artwork, the first thing you notice is the bright orange spherical shapes that pepper the trees in the background behind her and illuminate the trail as well. In addition, she has the same color styles in her hair and her eyes as well, which really adds to her contrast. So looking to that emphasis, I found this swamp from Eldraine, illustrated by Svetlin Velinov, and this forest illustrated by Adam Paquette from Strixhaven, that I think match those feelings very well and highlight the bright orange color styling she displays. And finally, we've got Wyleth, Soul of Steel, another Boros commander that exemplifies blue tones. However, the difference between Wyleth's blue and someone like Osgir's blue tones is more in the flatness of it rather than the color itself. The way the blues interact with the scenery makes them darker and lower contrast, designed to recede into the background, so I wanted to make sure that the lands I chose fit that idea as best as possible. With those things in mind, I have two different color pairings that I think match well. The first is this Plains from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, illustrated by Sarah Finnegan, and this mountain from Kaladesh, illustrated by Richard Wright, which I think capture that deep blue tone while also having the darker color palette that matches alongside. But for the second variation, I decided to focus my attention to the stones behind him, and found myself drawn to the lands from Tarkir. So take a look at this Plains from Khans of Tarkir, illustrated by Florian de Jessencourt, that has those tall pillar-like mountains that you see in the background of Wyleth. And this mountain also illustrated by Florian de Jessencourt from the same set. I feel like despite not using the muted gray-blue color, it serves to extend the background of Wyleth into the other two lands, which I think is very cool. But there you have it, 5 more commanders sorted for which basic lands I think match them best. But I want to see what you think. Tell me which commanders you'd like me to try and pick up basic lands for. Comment below and let me know, and have a great day.